In this video, I want to make a text comparer function to show how Power Query might be doing it behind the scenes when you use a function like value compare. And I'm going to be a good boy and use parameters this time, which means I can make a query and then convert that into a function. I'm going to have a text A and a text B, and then I want to compare them inside my query. I first want to check if the two texts are of equal length, because if they aren't, then they can't be the same. Meaning we'll take the text of A and the text of B. Right now they are of equal length, but the values aren't the same. We can then rename that, but because it's the first step, I can't do it over on the right pane. I have to do it inside the advanced editor. And then I need to remember to change what step is shown after the in. Afterwards, I want to grab the length because I want to compare each text character one at a time. Then I can use list generate because I want to do one calculation for each text character, and the length already tells me how many iterations I need to do. I want a record because I need to be able to do a list lookup into my text, and it's a lot easier when you have a looper variable. Then I want to do a comparison between the first character of the first text and the first character of the second text. And I can use text middle to extract one character at a specific position. In this first loop, I want to grab the first text, which means I can input 0 in text middle. I want to go into text A, start at position 0, meaning all the way at the left, then grab one text character. Then I want to ask, is this equal to the same lookup, but in text B? Then I want to keep looping so long as my looper variable is less than the length, because the length is in the actual length of the text, but lists are index 0 based. This way, when I'm all the way at the end and I've done a comparison between each text, then looper will be equal to 6, which is not less than 6, so it terminates. The next is then going to be, I want to increase looper to be equal to its current value plus 1. And it's always a bit messy here because looper and square brackets looper is not the same. Square brackets looper is the value of the current iteration, and looper without square brackets is the next value. After this comma, I now have access to looper without square brackets because it's already been defined. Then I can do the same comparison as above, but this time I want to check the next character. And I also need to input the looper variable so that it actually changes with each loop. And then when I reference looper, as stated, this refers to what looper has been set to, meaning in the first iteration, looper is 0, then in the second iteration, it's 1. And I also need to change it here. And for now, we'll output a record, and I need an equal sign. For now, we'll output a record, because we can then check each individual comparison. We can see in the fourth iteration, the characters aren't equal to one another, which makes sense because this is an N and then this is an A. But there's no point in continuing the iteration once we have a false, because if one of the character positions aren't the same in both texts, then text A can't be equal to text B, meaning I want to terminate early. We can add that by adding a second condition in the termination to say that I also want compare to be equal to true, meaning the current compare. Now we stop after the third iteration, because in the fourth iteration, compare is then equal to false, which means we stop. So we do calculate the next value in the fourth iteration, but because compare is not equal to true, we terminate. And there's also no point in outputting a record. I only need the looper in order to generate my list, which means we can add the fourth argument to say I only want to output the compare value. And then we get true, true, true. Next, I can compare the text length of one of the texts to the list length, because if each character is the same in both texts, then the length of this list will be equal to the length of the text. Conveniently, the list.count function is not index 0 based, meaning if the two are the same, I can ask, is length equal to the list count of the previous step, which they aren't. And actually, I guess this is the only thing I need. I did an extra check in my notes, but I don't think it's necessary. I want to test if it is necessary. I can now convert this into a function because I'm referencing parameters. Actually, no, I never made these parameters, so I will change that. Now the two variables are actually parameters, and inside my function I then reference parameters, which means I can right click and turn this into a function. We can call that func compare text. And now our query is changed into a helper query, which is linked to the function. And then we can try calling it. And then the two are of equal length, but they aren't identical. And we can also try checking if one is longer than the other. And then it is true, which I don't want. As mentioned, I do have to check that they're identical, because actually in my function, we should look in the query, I actually only check the length of the text A, meaning in this situation where text A and B are identical, but B is longer, then the function outputs true, because I base the length on text A. So we do have to check that they are of equal length, which is fine. It just means we have to add one more check. That check length should be equal to true, and compare text and list length should also be true, and then it should be fine. It was good that I checked that. And it currently respects case, which I do want. I simply wanted to show how Power Query might be doing a comparison behind the scenes, where it would then check each individual character. But I wanted to add that you should check the length first, because then you can terminate early. That's also why I want check length to be first, because Power Query is lazy, which means when it has a condition here with two conditions, it will check the first condition, and check length is easier and takes less computation than the second, meaning if the first is not true, then the whole condition can't be true, meaning there's no need to check the second condition, which will save some computation, so that's nice. And that was actually everything. So, yep,